Now to the big news story of the day, the death of North Korean leader Kim Jong-il. The reclusive and mercurial dictator died of a heart attack. He was 69. Kim Jong-il will be succeeded by his third son, Kim Jong-un. But the future of the secretive communist state is now far from certain, and the death of the man referred to as dear leader could have heightened tensions with the country's neighbours in the south. Richard Broinowski was Australia's ambassador to South Korea from 1987 to 1989. He joins us now. Richard, welcome to the Drum.
Good evening.
What is the implications of the death of Kim Jong-il?
I don't think we have any yet. I think it's a bit too early to tell. I think there's been a fair degree of hyperventilation in the media about what's going on. Is South Korea really going on to some sort of war footing? Are the Japanese really very concerned? When you look back a couple of years, you see that Kim Jong-il put his younger sister and her husband as kind of minders for Kim Jong-un, his third son, as regents, if you like. Look at this as a sort of a royal dynasty, and you see that he appointed them to raise this young man and to give him the sort of gravitas he'd need to be the leader of the country, even though it's a tokenism that's involved. And it seems to me that the stability is there, it will continue, the military will hold their positions behind the scene. There'll be gestures and no doubt some sorts of tokens of provocation, but it won't amount to anything. And the last thing the South Koreans want to see, even though they're allegedly going on a war footing, is instability and unpredictability in North Korea. They, like the Germans before the combination of East and West Germany, had a nightmare that they'd have to take over North Korea and all the economic pain and indebtedness that would incur. They would much prefer, when they speak to you frankly, and they don't often, to see the status quo continue.
Richard, some of the concern seems to be about the personality of Kim Jong-il's son. What can you tell us about the man?
Not very much. It's kind of tabula rasa at this stage. We don't really know. He's a young man. Obviously, he's not dumb, any more than Kim Jong-il. Kim Jong-il was a fairly sharp fellow, I think, in many respects, and he wasn't nearly as self-indulgent and as some of the press and also some of the Western intelligence.
Is Kim Jong-un likely to be more militarily aggressive? Or
who can say? I don't think so. I think he's going to have a very controlled existence. And how can he be more military? Because his father was a man who was very quick to develop a kind of a war footing if he regarded the provocations from South Korea or Japan or the United States to warrant it.
I don't suppose we've got much hope that he's going to have a different attitude to the plight of the people, the poverty, the human rights?
No. The country is in poor shape economically. It's blessed or cursed by having bad seasons, inclement weather and so on. What they really want is to have access to international markets. They're not getting them. That's one of the two things they want from Washington. The other is a guarantee that the United States won't bring about regime change in North Korea, whether that can be done through the six-party talks or, much more relevantly, on one-to-one talks between Washington and Pyongyang.
But Richard,
we have to wait to see.
Where's China sit in all of this? Because they would have had something to do with the succession, don't you
Absolutely.
think?
China's the godfather, the main guardian, if you like, of Pyongyang. And they'll continue in that role. The last thing China wants to see is instability on their southeastern frontier, just as they were very keen not to see an end to the Vietnam War because they prefer to have divide and rule on their southeastern flank, so they wanted the same in the northeast too. But China is, I think, if anything, China has a moral obligation towards North Korea, and they'll stick by it. I mean, they didn't lose so many hundreds of thousands of men in the Korean War to mean nothing. They are an ally of Pyongyang. We have to get used to that.
Richard, how genuinely dire is it on the ground in North Korea in terms of the poverty?
When I was ambassador there, I never got to North Korea. My successor, Sam Gerevich, is jointly accredited from Seoul to Pyongyang, so he goes in there occasionally. I think it's pretty dire, but not as bad as people suggest. I think there's a fair bit of black propaganda sculling around that comes from different Western intelligence sources about really what's going on in North Korea. They have bad seasons, they have good seasons. But I don't think the sort of wide-scale starvation that they talk about, and this is all at the expense of a nuclear program, is really quite valid or very fair.
When you look at North Korea today and you compare to, say, East Germany in 1987, both countries looked quite stable. Nobody really expected any big shifts, and yet within 2 years East Germany collapsed after Moscow basically withdrew support. Is that such a scenario likely that at one stage in the future Beijing will actually reconsider its position towards Pyongyang?
I think that probably East Germany collapsed as much as anything else because of Glasnost and all the things that happened there and the collapse of the Soviet Empire. We don't have the same situation now. North Korea's had to wing it despite the collapse of the Soviet Union, and its only friend is China. I think there's a degree of stability still there that will continue.
Richard, I have to ask you quickly. We've had dear leader, great leader. What's this leader going to be known as?
Brilliant comrade.
Brilliant comrade.
I understand.
Love it. I love it. Well, that's an interesting title, and that's about all we've got on the show tonight. I would like to thank our brilliant comrades, Das, Damien Smith and Oliver Mark Hartwich, as well as Richard Broinowski, for joining us.